The British royal family is currently facing one of its most significant crises in modern history. This is not a sudden storm, but a slow-building earthquake that is shaking the very foundations of the monarchy. The public's trust, once a given, is now eroding at an alarming rate. We see a family that appears out of touch, increasingly secretive, and unable to manage its own narrative in an age of instant information. The recent confusion and lack of transparency surrounding the health of both King Charles and the Princess of Wales have only deepened the public's sense of unease, making many question the institution's ability to survive in the 21st century. This crisis is not about one single event. It is the result of many years of missteps, poor decisions, and a failure to adapt to a changing world. The monarchy has long relied on a carefully crafted image of stability and tradition, but that image is now cracking under the pressure of internal conflicts and external scrutiny. The firm, as it is known, seems to operate in a bubble, making choices that feel disconnected from the reality of the people it is meant to serve. This disconnect has created a vacuum, which is quickly being filled by speculation, conspiracy theories, and a growing sense of disillusionment among the British public and observers worldwide. The monarchy's current struggles are a clear sign that the old ways of doing things are no longer working. The traditional pact between the royals and the public, where the people offer their loyalty in exchange for a sense of national pride and continuity, is breaking down. In its place is a growing demand for transparency, accountability, and fairness, values that the institution seems ill-equipped to provide. Instead of addressing these concerns head-on, the palace has often resorted to silence, or worse, clumsy attempts at public relations that have backfired spectacularly. This has only made the situation worse, leaving people to wonder if the monarchy has lost its way for good. The core of the problem is a fundamental loss of trust. When a palace-approved photograph is found to be digitally manipulated, or when clear answers about a senior royal's well-being are not provided, it chips away at the public's faith. These incidents might seem small in isolation, but together they paint a picture of an institution that is either unwilling or unable to be honest with the public. This erosion of trust is the most dangerous threat the monarchy faces, because once it is gone, it is incredibly difficult to win back. The royal family is at a crossroads, and the path it chooses now will determine its future. For years, the Duke and Duchess of Sussex, Harry and Meghan, have been blamed for every problem the royal family faces. They have been turned into convenient scapegoats, a perfect distraction from the deeper, more systemic issues plaguing the monarchy. Whenever a new scandal or a difficult question arises for the firm, the focus is quickly shifted back to the couple in California. Their choices, their words, and their very existence are used to divert public attention away from the institution's own failings. This is not an accident. It is a calculated strategy to protect the core of the monarchy at the expense of those on the periphery. This constant scapegoating has created a powerful yet misleading narrative that paints Harry and Meghan as the sole source of the family's troubles. They are portrayed as disruptive, selfish, and ungrateful, while the institution itself is presented as a victim of their actions. This narrative conveniently ignores the very real issues that the couple raised, such as institutional racism, a lack of mental health support, and the toxic relationship between the palace and the press. By focusing on the messengers, the monarchy has successfully avoided having to deal with the uncomfortable truths in their message, at least for a while. The effectiveness of this strategy relies on a compliant media and a public ready to believe the worst. For years, a section of the British press has relentlessly attacked Meghan, using thinly veiled racism and outright lies to create a villain. This has made it easy for the palace to point the finger at the Sussexes whenever things go wrong. The public is fed a steady diet of negative stories about the couple, making it harder for them to see the bigger picture. This has allowed the real problems within the monarchy, such as a lack of accountability and an outdated structure, to fester, hidden behind the smokescreen of the Sussex problem. Now, however, with the recent crises surrounding King Charles and the Princess of Wales, the strategy is beginning to fail. With Harry and Meghan thousands of miles away, the palace can no longer blame them for its own public relations disasters. The focus has shifted back to the senior working royals, and the public is starting to see the cracks that were there all along. The scapegoating of the Sussexes was never a long-term solution. it was a temporary fix. Now, the institution must face the consequences of its own actions without its favorite distraction to hide behind. Nothing exposes the royal family's deep-seated hypocrisy more clearly than the contrasting treatment of Prince Harry and Prince Andrew. On one side, we have Harry, a prince who chose to step back from his role to protect his family's mental health and safety. For this, he was stripped of his military titles, his patronages, and his publicly funded security. He and his wife have been subjected to a relentless campaign of criticism and public condemnation, orchestrated in part by the very institution he was born into. His crime, it seems, was to speak his truth and seek a different life. On the other side, we have Prince Andrew, the king's brother, who was forced to step back from public duties due to his deeply troubling association with the convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein and serious allegations of sexual assault, which he has always denied. Despite the gravity of these accusations and a multi-million-dollar settlement in a civil case, Andrew has been allowed to retain many of his privileges. He continues to live in a lavish royal residence and has been seen in public with the family on several occasions, a clear signal of their continued support and protection. This glaring double standard sends a powerful message to the public. It suggests that for the monarchy, the sin of speaking out against the institution is far worse than being associated with serious criminal allegations. Harry's desire for accountability and change was seen as a threat, and he was punished for it. Andrew's situation, while deeply embarrassing for the family, was treated as a problem to be managed and contained, with the primary goal being to protect him, and, by extension, the institution itself. This shows a moral compass that is not just broken, but dangerously skewed. This tale of two princes reveals the true priorities of the firm. It is not about public service, duty, or moral leadership. It is about power, control, and the preservation of the status quo at all costs. The message is clear. Loyalty to the institution, no matter how flawed, is valued above all else. Those who challenge it, like Harry, will be cast out. Those who bring shame upon it, like Andrew, will be quietly protected behind palace walls. This hypocrisy is not lost on the public, and it is a major reason why trust in the monarchy continues to decline. The issue of security is, frankly, another area where the royal family's glaring double standards are on full display. When Prince Harry and Meghan stepped back from their roles as senior working royals, their publicly funded police protection was removed. This decision was presented as a logical consequence of their new status, but it really ignored the very real and specific threats they faced. Harry, as a veteran of 2 tours in Afghanistan and the son of Princess Diana, has always been a high-profile target. Removing his family's security was not just a procedural matter, it was, in truth, a punitive measure designed to punish them for leaving the fold. This decision becomes even more indefensible when you consider the ongoing security provided to other non-working members of the royal family, individuals who face only a fraction of the threat level that the Sussexes do continue to receive protection, simply because they have remained within the royal circle. The message is, sadly, quite clear. Security is not a right based on threat level, but a privilege granted based on loyalty to the institution. This has forced Harry to engage in legal battles with the UK's Home Office, fighting for the right to pay for his own police protection when he and his family are in the country. The media's role in all of this is also deeply problematic. The Royal Rota, a system that gives a select group of British media outlets special access to the royal family, often acts as a mouthpiece for the palace. These outlets have consistently downplayed the security threats faced by the Sussexes, while simultaneously fueling the public animosity that creates those threats. They focus relentlessly on the cost of security for Harry and Meghan, framing it as an unfair burden on the taxpayer, while ignoring the much larger security costs for the rest of the family and, of course, the hypocrisy of the situation. This creates a vicious cycle where the media creates the problem and then criticizes the couple for trying to solve it. All of this highlights a culture of secrecy and control. Decisions about security are made behind closed doors, with very little transparency or accountability. The public is left to piece together the truth from court documents and media reports, which are often biased and incomplete. By using security as a weapon, the monarchy has shown a cruel and vindictive side that is, frankly, hard to reconcile with its public image of duty and service. It is yet another example of the institution putting its own interests ahead of the well-being of its own family members, further eroding the trust of a watchful public. To truly understand the current crisis, we must look back to the actions of King Charles and the beginning of the monarchy's modern decline. The marriage of Charles and Diana was presented to the world as a fairy tale, but we now know it was built on a foundation of deceit. Charles's ongoing relationship with Camilla Parker Bowles throughout his marriage was not just a private matter, it was a public deception that had devastating consequences. This original sin set in motion a chain of events that continues to haunt the royal family to this day, creating a deep-seated legacy of mistrust. The institution's treatment of Diana, Princess of Wales, was, frankly, a masterclass in cruelty and mismanagement. She was a young woman thrust into an impossible situation, expected to produce an heir and a spare while turning a blind eye to her husband's infidelity. When she refused to suffer in silence and began to speak her truth, the palace machine turned against her. She was labelled as unstable, difficult, and a threat to the monarchy. The very institution that should have protected her worked to isolate and undermine her, all in an effort to preserve the image of the future king. This period marked a turning point in the public's relationship with the monarchy. People saw a beloved princess being treated unfairly, and they began to question the integrity of the entire family. Charles's admission of adultery in a 1994 television interview, followed by Diana's own explosive panorama interview, really blew the lid off the carefully constructed image of royal respectability. It revealed a family that was dysfunctional, cold, and more concerned with appearances than with human decency. The public's sympathy was overwhelmingly with Diana, and the monarchy's reputation was left in tatters. King Charles's actions in the past are directly linked to the problems of today. His treatment of his first wife created a wound that has never fully healed. It taught the public to be skeptical of the palace's official narrative and to look for the truth behind the polished facade. It also created a deep well of sympathy for Diana's sons, particularly Harry, who is now seen as fighting a similar battle against the same unfeeling institution. The current crisis is not new. It is in many ways an echo of the past, a continuation of a story that began with the betrayal of a princess. Prince Harry is in many ways the living embodiment of his mother's legacy. Like Diana, he possesses a natural ability to connect with people on a human level, an empathy that often seems lacking in other members of the royal family. He inherited her rebellious spirit, her compassion for the underdog, and her willingness to challenge the stuffy conventions of the monarchy. Diana was known as the People's Princess because she dared to be vulnerable and authentic in a world of rigid protocol. Harry, the People's Prince, follows in her footsteps by speaking his truth, even when it is uncomfortable for the institution. Diana's struggles with the palace and the press left a deep and lasting impact on her youngest son. He witnessed firsthand how the institution failed to protect her and how the media hounded her to her tragic death. This experience shaped his view of the monarchy and his role within it. His decision to step back from royal life was not a rejection of his family, but a desperate attempt to avoid history repeating itself with his own wife and children. He saw the same patterns of isolation, scapegoating, and media intrusion that destroyed his mother, and he chose a different path. This is why Harry's honesty is so important. When he speaks about his mental health, the pressures of royal life, or the racism faced by his wife, he is breaking a cycle of silence that has long defined the royal family. Like Diana, he is giving a voice to issues that the institution would prefer to keep hidden. This vulnerability is not a weakness. It is in fact a strength. It makes him relatable to an entire generation that values authenticity over tradition. His willingness to be open about his struggles has done more to modernize the perception of royalty than any palace-approved photo opportunity ever could. Harry's journey is a continuation of the work his mother started. Diana used her platform to bring attention to causes like HIV and AIDS and landmines, often forcing the royal family into uncomfortable new territory. Harry does the same with his work on mental health, conservation, and support for veterans. He understands that a modern monarchy cannot survive by simply cutting ribbons and waving from balconies. It must engage with the real world and use its platform for genuine good. In leaving the institution, Harry has ironically become the most powerful heir to Diana's true legacy of compassionate and impactful public service. A key tactic used to distract from the real issues plaguing the monarchy is the media's obsessive focus on trivial matters, particularly the clothes worn by female royals. For years, newspapers and websites have dedicated countless column inches to analysing every outfit worn by Meghan Markle or Catherine, Princess of Wales. Articles debate the cost of a dress, the designer of a handbag, or the hidden meaning behind a piece of jewellery. This style over substance reporting creates a false sense of importance around fashion, turning royal women into little more than walking clothes hangers. This relentless focus on appearance serves a dual purpose. First, it distracts the public from more serious questions about the monarchy's finances, its lack of transparency, and its internal conflicts. It is far easier to discuss the cost of Meghan's coat than it is to have a meaningful conversation about institutional racism or the constitutional role of the monarchy. Second, it provides an easy way to create and control narratives. A particular color can be interpreted as a sign of rebellion. An expensive outfit can be used to label a royal as out of touch, and repeating an outfit can be spun as either frugal or uninspired, depending on the agenda. The double standards in this type of coverage are particularly stark. While the women are judged on their wardrobes, the men are largely ignored. Prince William or King Charles can wear the same suit multiple times with little to no comment. But if Catherine or Meghan were to do the same, it would be a major news story. This sexist approach reduces powerful, intelligent women to their aesthetic choices, reinforcing outdated ideas about a woman's value. It is frankly a lazy and damaging form of journalism that prevents any real discussion about their work, their patronages, or their contributions to society. Ultimately, this trivial pursuit is a symptom of a broken system. The monarchy and the media that covers it have realized that it is easier to keep the public entertained with a fashion show than to engage them in a serious debate about the future of the institution. But this strategy is beginning to wear thin. The public is growing tired of the distractions and is starting to demand substance over style. They are losing trust in an institution that seems more concerned with how it looks than with what it does. For the monarchy to survive, it must move beyond the superficial and prove that it has a real purpose. True change will only come when honesty and accountability are valued more than a well-chosen hat.